Well, good evening, everyone.
I just want to say welcome. We're very pleased to have Maria Douglas, who is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Senior Specialist for the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin. And she is going to help us better understand diversity, equity, and inclusion within the context of empathy. So please join me in welcoming Maria.
Ellen, thank you for having me. And if you don't know, Ellen is the president of our local League of Women Voters of the Ripon area and former state board member of the League of Women Voters Wisconsin. So thank you for having me tonight. The talk tonight will be about empathy and empathy on purpose. And it's about really looking into implicit biases and microaggressions. So hello, I'm Maria, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with pronouns, I always like to share my pronouns. I learned about them really, to be honest, because I'm 45. We're all learning about this together about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And really what pronouns mean are just like, I see you and you're safe with me. It's a way of identifying and opening up to people and being sensitive to their sexual orientation or gender identity. And I am personally a DEI committee member of the League of Women Voters, Ozaukee County, as well as my role at the state. And thank you for having me. So DEI begins as an internal journey, and this evening we will travel introspectively because that's where it starts, is in your heart and recognizing your biases. So I have 2 requests. First of all, keep an open heart and mind, and if you have a question, please hold off until the designated question and answer time. I love quotes, and so anybody who's been to my presentation knows that I put several quotes and interactive videos into them. So the first one of the night, it's not at all hard to understand a person. It's only hard to listen without bias.
Our brain is hardwired to trust what's familiar and be suspicious of what's unfamiliar. It's a basic survival instinct that's helped keep us safe for thousands of years.
We unconsciously sort things into familiar versus unfamiliar, same versus different, them versus us. Here's a test. How do you feel about people who own a handgun?
Don't attend church. Vote for the other candidate.
Are on welfare?
Don't eat meat?
Have tattoos?
Don't believe in marriage.
Drive an electric car?
Didn't go to college.
Don't speak English?
Curse?
Are over 60.
Are disabled?
Drive the speed limit?
Love cats.
Love dogs? Can you feel your brain sorting people into groups? Was there a little them versus us happening? It can happen unconsciously.
So I love that video because every time I watch it, different things stick out to me. And I don't know about you, but I could feel my brain shifting as the speaker was mentioning different things. Like these are the things that we encounter every day. Like, oh, you have a cat or a dog, or oh, I didn't vote. And all of these things elicit a response. And this video
Are you seriously
is
considering
awesome
her as a
because
candidate?
it really goes into our blind spots, and we all have them. And it's a neurological process that we really can't avoid because of our physiology. Here we go.
She's a woman.
She's a woman.
This is a man's job.
Really not educated.
She even speak English.
That's not me. I'm not like that. You call it an honest mistake. Science calls it a blind spot. Our unconscious mind is a mysterious and powerful thing. It makes 90% of our decisions without us even knowing it. Our brains are overloaded with 11 million pieces of information every second. Yet we can only process about 40 of them. So we're wired to make cognitive shortcuts. using past experiences to make assumptions. And you know what happens when we assume. Our unconscious mind can put us on autopilot, determining where we sit, who we eat lunch with, who we turn to for advice, and who we choose to offer a helping hand. Living our lives with blind spots can put us in a tunnel. Same point of view, same decisions, same outcomes. We can find ourselves trapped in the land of snap judgments and misconceptions. We've all been on both the giving and receiving end of blind spots. Think about it. Who's talented? Who's able? Who can I trust? Who belongs? We've all been there. Blind spots are part of the human condition. Our choices have consequences for us and the people we interact with. By accepting that blind spots exist, we can stop. Imagine what possibilities exist if we could do it all over again. Different perspectives, inclusive relationships, diverse networks, better outcomes, seeing people for who they really are. People like you with unlimited potential. We all have blind spots. Once you accept that you have them, you can choose to do something about it. It's time to check your blind spots and focus on what's possible.
So blind spots, we all have them, right? It's a neurological process that all of us have as human beings. It helps us put basically these lenses and filters, our biases, help put us in this world, one foot in front of the next. And so it's a way that we can quickly sort information from 11 million pieces of information to 40 at any given moment. And so where this implicit bias comes in is, these biases are formed out of our experience, out of things that we read, out of things that we encounter in our daily lives. And so this tonight is a journey about the introspection of where our hearts are and our perspective is, to begin to become aware of these filters and to try to be cognizant of the filters that we apply in everyday situations. So the League of Women Voters US DEI policy is held as equal to our nonpartisan policy. And as many of you may know, the League of Women Voters is a 501c3, and some of you here may represent 501c3s in your communities. And so that is how important this is to our organization nationally. And so the leagues across the U.S. are required to adopt and implement the U.S.'s policy, and this is our own. And I'd like to take a moment to read it because it's exceptional. This really is so thorough and encompasses so many facets of diversity that I never even thought of. So the League of Women Voters is an organization fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion in principle and in practice. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are central to the organization's current and future success, engaging all individuals, households, communities, and policymakers in creating a more perfect democracy. The League of Women Voters is an organization fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion in principle and in practice. There shall be no barriers to full participation in this organization on the basis of gender, gender identity, ethnicity, race, native or indigenous origin, age, generation, sexual orientation, culture, belief system, marital status, parental status, socioeconomic status, language, accent, ability, mental health, educational level or background, geography, nationality, work style, work experience, job role function, thinking style, personality type, physical appearance, political perspective or affiliation, and or any other characteristic that can be identified as recognizing or illustrating diversity. Diversity, equity, inclusion are essential to the organization's current and future success in engaging all individuals, households, communities, and policymakers in creating a more perfect democracy. And I'd like to open this up to the audience for people to express any of these that were new to them that maybe you never thought of before, any of these facets of diversity or intersectionality.
I guess the job role function, thinking style, like that section, it's never been one I really thought about before, so that was new to me.
Job role function and thinking style.
Work experience.
Work experience. Mm-hmm. Those are some of the ones I thought of as well. I thought personality type was one I never thought of before as a facet of intersectionality or diversity. I just thought, oh, well, it's just a trait, like I have brown hair. Yep. So what does this mean? It means we're required to change. And for those of you who are joining us who are outside of the League of Women Voters, which just means you're a friend of the League, is you're really not an outsider. You're welcome to, adopt any of these pieces of policy into your own or to use this as a template. But it means that we are required to change. Well, let's see if it will change the slide. There we go. Awesome. So intersectionality is kind of what I alluded to before. So what does that mean? You might have heard of this term before, but it considers the unique facets of each individual and how we ensure that each demographic of our community has been reached out to, heard, and has an opportunity to give input and to lead. And this is the path to equity and inclusivity. And so, as I travel around the state, so many people say, well, you've sent us our census data, and we are like 98% white in our community. And I hear this all the time, right? But here's the interesting thing about intersectionality. It's just like facets of a diamond. And so there are so many layers within a seemingly homogeneous group of people. So for instance, we all have a work background that's different. We all have a creed. We all have an education or educational level, a parental status. We have lived in different geographical locations, possibly. We have different thinking styles, religious beliefs, job classifications, marital status. We all have one of those. We all have a political ideology or lack thereof. An appearance, a communication style, sexual orientation, ethnicity, and physical qualities and abilities, just to name some of them. And so really when you take all of those different facets, like cuts of a diamond, you put it together, we are really unique individually, even within that seemingly homogeneous people group or group of citizens or community members. So, working from the inside out. So self-growth is intentional. And really, it's kind of like if you set a New Year's resolution, like I'm going to work out every day or journal every day or meditate every day. That's kind of what this is. It's kind of like a practice, a regular practice. So this involves regularly setting aside time for engaging uncomfortable ideas and facts through learning and discussion, becoming actively aware of the filters that you use, like we talked about earlier, and a self-reflection of your views of traditional roles and values, like the roles and values that you grew up with or from your original or your family of origin. Your biases, your perceptions, your expectations of those who are different from you, the speech, gestures, and practices and traditions and those closest to you use, and the way people who are different from yourself may be portrayed on TV, social media, and the news. And also, this was mine to throw in, and to whom issues reported on are pertinent to. The highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and live in another world. this is from the book Becoming Anti-Racist. And so that's why it's there. And really, each of us has a personal responsibility to not act in a discriminatory way. And so really, this is kind of the path of growth. And so this is pertaining specifically to race, but as we understand, like there's so many facets of intersectionality. And so it could becoming anti-ageist or ableist. Ableist means like kind of like having a prejudice against somebody with a disability. So the fear zone is like, well, I'm not going to engage them because I want to be comfortable. I talk to people who look and think like me. And then as we learn, we kind of grow into these outer rings of the circle. So like I'm vulnerable about my own biases and knowledge gaps, and that's where we are today. So that's very exciting. I seek out questions that make me uncomfortable, and then to the growth zone. And so onward here.
People say that if you want something done well, you should do it yourself. Or at the very least, find someone just like you to do it. Okay, maybe like you to do it. Okay, maybe, but that's often what we do. All thanks to similarity bias. Similarity bias happens when we're drawn towards people who seem familiar or remind us of ourselves. Which is okay if you're casting for the role of twin. You need to work with others to accomplish a goal. So why do we think like this? Well, experts tell us it's how we've evolved. Our early ancestors had to learn how to survive, to assess quickly between friend or foe. As generations passed down their culture's survival techniques, they also shared their blind spots. And we're still applying these old in-group and out-group biases to our social networks today. Picture your neighbors, your friends, your closest colleagues. Chances are the people in your inner circle are pretty similar to you. Let's test this idea. Would it be this one? Or this one? Or how about this one? Did you instantly recognize the group you'd be most comfortable with? Studies show we often gravitate towards people who we think are similar. If this dynamic of similarity bias naturally happens at networking events, what might that mean in workplaces? Research has shown that when supervisors rate their subordinates, the more similar the parties are, the higher the rating the supervisor. Another study showed that interviewers prefer candidates who have similar demographics or attitudes to their own. Similarity bias means you may be unintentionally giving opportunities to others based on something. Similarity bias is important because it's the right thing to do and it's the smart thing to do. According to a survey by PwC, a majority of directors believe diversity positively impacts their board and company, and many diverse teams perform better. Companies with the highest levels of racial diversity brought in nearly 15 times more sales revenue than those with the lowest levels. And in the S&P 1500, female representation in top management was found to improve performance in firms focused on the strategy of innovation. Bottom line, diversity is good for people, for businesses, and for society. So how can we outsmart our unconscious mind? How can we get past similarity bias to build more inclusive environments? First, you can examine your network. Who's in it? Who's not? Don't unintentionally exclude people who aren't like you. Open the door to your inner circle. Invite others with different experiences and perspectives in. You can learn a lot from them. And encourage ideas. It's one thing to give someone a seat at the table. It's another to give them a voice. You'll be amazed at how your own perspective might change. You know, I see a lot of myself in you, but I think it's time for something different.
So how does this apply to league in the workplace, right? And so when, as we grow and we become younger and more diverse, the reason I say that is because the most diverse population right now in the United States are youth. That's Gen Z and millennials. And so it's important to realize the similarity or affinity bias. So yes, naturally, I would have much more in common with somebody who is a mom like me, likely, who's juggling kids between schools. But it's really like taking that extra step to think, who is different from me in this room? Who doesn't know somebody in this room? And for those of us joining who would like to know more about the workplace, I have a couple more statistics about why diversity in the workplace is so important. Diverse companies are 70% more likely to capture new markets. Diverse teams are 87% better at making decisions. Diverse management teams lead to 19% higher revenue. 2 out of 3 job candidates see companies that have diverse workforces. And so that's really interesting because people do need to work to make a living, to pay for their mortgage and their children. They don't have to choose to come to the league to volunteer. So even more importantly, for volunteer organizations or for corporations that have a volunteer base as for their work. 74% of millennial employees believe their organization is more innovative when it has a culture of inclusion. And 47% actively look for diversity and inclusion when sizing up potential employers. That's by Deloitte. It's a nationwide consulting firm. So who else is in your community? And so this is where I throw out the Sesame Street song. Who are the people in your neighborhood? In your neighborhood, in your neighborhood, they're the people that you meet when you're walking down the street. They're the people that you meet each day. And so everyone here could be in your neighborhood, and everyone in your community has a right to access voter information and get registered to vote and have access to polls in their voter IDs. So now we're going to think about our local leagues, like who is in our local leagues, or who is in our place of business or employment, who is in our, religious study group, who is in our, social clubs, like our bridge group, who is in our tennis group or whatever. This is applicable to every sphere of our lives, really. And so who's in it and who's not? And so I'd like to just take a moment to think about 3 actions that you can commit to. Now we're going to talk about microaggressions.
Sophie, go to little girl's room for a minute, please.
There's going to be some things that you're going to be able to get that other people in the office don't get. One of them, gym membership.
Hey, woman. We're missing the action.
Oye, some basura. You want to have some ice cream with my family?
Get lost, baseball.
Microaggressions are along a continuum from being very deliberate and conscious to being outside one's conscious behavior. We identified 3 types of microaggressions. Microassaults to old-fashioned racism.
Your kind don't understand English.
My kind?
The other types of microaggressions are more insidious, hidden, subtle, and the second type is a micro-insult. A couple of color comes into a restaurant to be seated. They're seated in a more undesirable place than a white couple who might be coming in.
Huh? And how many cups of coffee did we get?
You don't drink coffee, and I didn't want any.
Man, that woman in there poured cup after cup to every single white person around us. But did she even ask you if you wanted any?
A micro assails their racial identity and self-esteem. Let's say African Americans, they are dangerous and criminal.
You see that?
What? She's cold.
She got she saw us.
Oh, come on, don't stop.
Man, look around you, man. You couldn't find a whiter, safer, or better lit part of this city right now.
There can be racial microaggressions, sexual orientation microaggressions, disability microaggressions, and gender microaggressions. Catcalls, staring at a woman's breasts or legs. It's a microaggression because it fulfills the theme of what we call sexual objectification.
I love the fact that you're a grandma.
Oh, God!
You are! You're a hot grandma!
Oh, my God!
Environmental microaggressions are a hostile and invalidating climate. If you choose to stay, you will be uncomfortable.
Yo, Mook! Mookie! What? Come here, the brothers up on the wall.
Man, ask Sal, right?
Hey, Sal, how come there the brothers up on the wall here?
You want brothers on the wall? Get your own place. You can do what you want.
Making trouble? Yeah, I'm a troublemaker. I'm making trouble.
Just coming in there. Suppose I busted your head.
Microaggressions are cumulative, and any one may represent the feather that breaks a camel's back.
There at the bush, you said you were going to get Jose to do it.
He here about it anyway. You don't finish.
Lucy, you know I don't speak Mexican.
I'm not a Mexican.
How unpopular Vietnam was. I'm not Vietnamese, I'm American.
What do you think I'm gay? Aren't you? What's the matter with you? Do I look gay to you? Do I look gay to you?
You're a good-looking man.
Thank you.
Very pretty. Real soft, delicate features. They're real feminine, you know, which is good for me because that would be a simple sort of transition. You know what I'm saying? Maybe throw a little.
So it's in the movies we watch, our TV shows we watch. They're all around us, right? So now I'd like to talk about allyship. Ally is a term used for people who support a social group other than their own by acknowledging disadvantage and oppression and taking action on the behalf of others. So it goes back to that LWV, Progressive Ally flag, which has the LGBTQIA plus colors. The black and the brown stands for the BIPOC community. So people who are brown like me and people who are black. And then the transgender is the light blue, pink, and white. Allyship is using your position of privilege to help people from one or more marginalized groups that you don't identify with. And, you know, all of us really, considering the facets of intersectionality, we all have privilege or lack of privilege in some area, right? And those privileges can come and go. Now we're going to learn about being an ally.
What if the power of connection was the key to healing our nation's divide? At its core, connection is a psychological need that allows us to feel a sense of togetherness through shared experiences. And if we want to get started with building connection, it first starts with diversifying our circles. First, I want you to take inventory of the people that you are connected to. Does everyone look like you and think like you and vote like you? When my husband was in the Army, he reported to formation at 5:50 a.m. for roll call to see who was present and accounted for. Let's pretend that it's 5:50 a.m. Take a look down your row. Who is standing next to you? Who's in your squad? And then I want you to take a look around the room and tell me who is noticeably absent. From there, I want to offer you 3 ways that you can begin to build a more diverse community. 1, look for opportunities to support and advocate
for marginalized groups, which not only includes people of color, but people with disabilities and our veterans. There are lots of organizations that could use a few extra volunteers. 2, you gotta speak up. Use your voice, your power, and your privilege to help advance the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion in your communities of influence. This is work that we simply cannot do alone. And 3, it can be done from the comfort of your own home by watching documentaries or reading books about race and privilege in America. Don't be afraid to challenge your own beliefs. And for some of you, I realize that this short is for you, even if that includes inviting a neighbor of a different background over for dinner. And as we build these small, meaningful connections and be more intentional about our everyday interactions, little by little, we can begin a journey to eliminating microaggressions and ultimately destroying systems of oppression. And let's be clear, the need for authentic connections does not remove the need for accountability. Instead, it invites us in and calls on us to be more courageous as we hold ourselves and each other to a higher standard. And it also allows us to not only
That's the end of that clip. So, the power of connection is really important, and really it's about creating a culture of vulnerability and really sharing who you are and being real with one another. And that is how we start in our journey of allyship. As we're learning about each other and growing together, learning about who are the people in our neighborhood, it's just keeping an open mind and an open heart and just really listening and learning about one another. And again, it's that power of connection and intentionality. And if any of you would like resources or great ideas for racial documentaries, as she had asked, I highly recommend 13th, which is about mass incarceration. It's on Netflix, and the book The Sum of Us. And more of those resources could be found on our League of Women Voters Wisconsin DEI landing page, which will come up later on in the presentation. So, okay, so this is really, this isn't always talked about, but a lot of times as a person of color or people in the LGBTQIA plus community or people who have visible disabilities mean like if somebody's in a wheelchair, has a feeding tube, or there's something visible about them, like as assistive technology, or you can tell like maybe they have impairment on the left side of their face or something, that they're visibly disabled. I have 7 autoimmune diseases. That's why I'm very tired right now. And so I have invisible disabilities. And so it's very interesting that a lot of times when people approach me, for instance, in my community, what is it like being a person of color? We're often the people who represent marginalized communities are often asked to educate others. And really, over time can build up. It can be very psychologically and emotionally exhausting. And just, I'd always like to point that out, just to keep that in mind. So there are some things that we can do on our own, and as we build relationships, then we can ask. But sometimes you can ask if you feel like the conversation's going the right way and the person has the time or the ability or bandwidth to do it, if you're really driving with the person. But it is important to keep that in mind. The responsibility is really on us, each of us, to understand more about the people around us, which is our own internal work. So again, maybe you have to do that homework. Maybe I have to do that homework, right? And maybe we have to engage in those uncomfortable emotions because we know it's our job and responsibility to have these conversations with ourselves so others don't have to have them with us. Okay, so Daryl Wing Sue was the voice about the microaggressions, insults, and others in the other video. He is a pioneer in this field, and so I figured you'd rather hear from him. But here's what he calls death by 1,000 cuts, and this is one of the terms he has coined that he is most famous for. Psychologists refer to everyday slights or indignities experienced by people of color as a death by 1,000 cuts. Far from being harmless and benign, microaggressions have a macro impact, which means a large impact on targets. A whole body of research supports this conclusion. They increase stress in the lives of people of color, lower emotional well-being, increase depression and negative feelings. They assail or assault the mental health of recipients, impede learning and problem solving, impair employee performance, and take a heavy toll on the physical well-being of targets. Equally important are findings that microaggressions lower the standard of living of people of color and create inequities in employment, education, and healthcare. And he's a Columbia professor. And don't let anybody who hasn't been in your shoes tell you how to tie your laces. I love that. So again, the cumulative effect of microaggressions can be more significant and more damaging than overt acts of prejudice. Here's some examples of gender-related microaggressions. The source is at the bottom of the picture. And I'm gonna have to get really close to this because I'm waiting on my distance glasses. So I'll be really loud. So what do gender-related microaggressions look like? One of them, assuming that the woman is a primary caregiver or will take on domestic duties such as pouring the tea or coffee at a meeting. Making comments about men who are always seen hanging out with women and no male friends, assuming their sexual orientation. Mansplaining. When men feel the need to explain something to a woman without first ascertaining that the woman either requires or welcomes the explanation. Making inappropriate comments about someone's appearance and then staring inappropriately at a woman's body. Those are some examples. Now here's some examples of ability-related microaggressions. Assuming someone with a disability and learning difference is incompetent. Eye-rolling, snickering, or mocking someone with a disability. Using equipment labeled for someone with adjustment requirements when not required. Not being invited to senior meetings because they might not behave in a neurotypical manner. Not asking for input into work or a project a person is involved in. Not taking them seriously and seeing only the disability and not the whole person. Accusing people with a disability and or accessibility needs of being difficult. So microaggressions add up. No matter how confident people from marginalized or underrepresented communities feel about their identities, microaggressions create unsafe spaces and make individuals feel like perpetual outsiders. And this was very fascinating to me. I worked in research. I worked at research at all my alma maters, and I worked in research, psychological research at Harvard Mass General. And so I always try to look for data. And so I was so stunned to see all of the impacts of discrimination. And we're gonna go through a bunch of them: physical, psychological, and socioeconomic impact. So poor physical health, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, premature death, GI issues, migraines, autoimmune disorders, mental illness, severe shock, insomnia. Financial, higher levels of poverty, additional medical costs, avoiding transportation is an added cost, negative impact on standard of living via unequal wages. Actually, research shows that people of color are much more often declined alone. Like if your name sounds like, because there's no way they can see you, but if you had an ethnic sounding name, you're more likely to be declined alone or have a higher interest rate on a loan. Difficulty gaining employment, higher interest rates is there. Challenges securing housing, and underperforming financially. Psychological, a lot of these might be kind of evident after what we just talked about, but anxiety, depression, anger, fear, suicide, decreased focus and attention, substance misuse, abuse, PTSD, chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, body image dissatisfaction, eating disorders. And what I know about my background as a psychologist is stress can trigger personality disorders, bipolar, and other disorders. Social, hypervigilance, fear of engaging with strangers or new people, disengaging from interests, social withdrawal and isolation, mistrust, feeling powerless, forced compliance, rage and anger, adaptation to adversity, thinking like that's normal. So in every presentation I ever give, I like to talk about self-care. And in this particular presentation, it is for all of us, not only who are volunteering in this nonpartisan political space, but a lot of us experience some of these we all experience microaggressions at some point, and some of us more than others, and some of us more regularly or severe than others. And so I mentioned self-care. And so self-care, I feel like, has gotten a bad rap in the last few years, or it's been blown out of proportion. It doesn't mean like, oh, I need to take a cruise or go to a spa for the weekend. It could mean that for you, but that's not what I'm referring to. Self-care is really having the agency to say no. It's about really eating well, exercising, making sure you get enough sleep, making sure you build in time for your family and friends, and doing something that you love. And so caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. I like to say, I like to use the analogy as a mom of 3 myself. It's the oxygen mask mentality. So if a plane is going down, they always say, put on your oxygen mask first and then put on your children. That's really what self-care means. And so now we're going to take a moment, just 1 minute, to do a breathing exercise. And breathing shows deep breathing or progressive muscle relaxation actually calms your nervous system and it lowers your heart rate. It's very important. It's a quick way, an easy way to just refocus and care for yourself. And I don't know if any of you practice yoga, but in yoga, we practice breathing, and breathing is a practice. And so the more you do it, the quicker you're able to calm down. And I love to share this example of a fourth grader that I worked with in rural East Texas counseling. And we would practice laying on the floor of my office progressive muscle relaxation, which is like kind of like guided imagery with hand movements and muscle tension and relaxation and breathing all together. Well, he wound himself up in a juvenile facility, and I would go service him with counseling services in the facility in jail. And so what was so awesome to see is that even behind glass with telephones, that he was able, because of the practice, just to calm down and just be present in that moment. And so I highly recommend. Nobody has to know you're doing it either. You could be at work, anywhere, in the car. Okay, so now we're going to talk about having difficult conversations and creating safe spaces. So it's like as we diversify our circles and get ourselves into those, situations or find ourselves interacting with people that we might not normally interact with, this is kind of how to navigate some of those potentially sticky situations.
Have you ever been nervous to have a crucial conversation? Feeling kind of anxious because you know you need to go talk to someone about something and you're just not really sure how to say it. You don't want it to blow up in your face. You don't want them to get defensive or angry or sad, and you're thinking, how do I do this? Well, here's my tip. Say that. Start the conversation with that. Come to the conversation and say, hey, I have something really important to talk about, and honestly, I'm pretty worried about it because I care about you and I care about this, and I'm not sure I know how to do it in a way that's going to be safe for everyone. So can you help me with that? Because I really want this to go well. Being transparent, being vulnerable about, I don't know how to have this conversation, but I want to, that is one of the most powerful ways you can communicate a good intent, creating safety for yourself and others to stumble through a conversation. If people know that your intent is good, if people know that your intent is to have a conversation in a way that works for them, they will allow you a lot of fumbles. I've said some pretty stupid things in conversations, and thankfully the other person has given me a pass because they knew that I was trying and that I cared about them. So that's my tip. When you're feeling nervous, anxious, and worried about having a conversation, start the conversation with, I'm feeling worried and nervous and anxious about this because it matters, and so do you.
I hope that helps. When we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak.
All right, let's get to that moment with Ellen Pompeo that everyone is talking about. She's trending right now. That's the cover of Net-a-Porter's annual Women in Television issue. They sat down with Ellen Pompeo, Gabrielle Union, Emma Roberts, and Gina Rodriguez for a photo shoot and interview.
Yeah, during the interview, they were talking about diversity within the industry, and Ellen took a moment to call it the magazine and point out the lack of diversity in the room amongst the staff and crew.
This day has been incredible, and there's a ton of women in the room. But I don't see enough color, and I didn't see enough color when I walked in the room today. And I had a meeting with a director of another endorsement project that I'm doing. I said, when I show up on set, I would like to see the crew look like the world that I walk around in every day. And I think it's up to all productions to make sure that your crew looks like the world we see. As Caucasian people, it's our job. It's our task, it's our responsibility to make sure that we speak up in every single room we walk into, that this is not okay, and that we can all do better. It's our job, because we've created the problem.
It wasn't something that was lost on me. I did not have the bravery.
For sure.
To say it or call it.
That's why it's our job. That's why it's our job.
There's a part of me that felt lucky to be here.
100%, girl. 100%.
But I never would have thought to say it in this space because I don't want to appear ungrateful and the ungrateful brown person.
And that's why it is my job. That's why I say we bear the burden, because they don't feel comfortable to speak up. And I'm happy to take it on in any room at any time.
But it's hard. It's hard. If you go this route, it's hard. And you run the risk of losing your space.
That.
You know what I mean? Well,
I don't
her
need a
space is pretty
space.
solid.
I was gonna say,
her space is solid.
Her space is different.
Bam.
Yeah, that's wild that they went there.
Yeah.
It's not often, that you'll get someone speaking out like that, and from Ellen Pompeo's point of view too. I love that continued on with Gabrielle Union talking about it as well.
Gina Rodriguez, as well. But yeah, even people are talking about just Gabrielle Union's face.
Yeah.
They're like, oh damn, she's going there.
Okay,
And that's the thing. I think you need those people that are in power. Like Ellen is looked at as this person. She's making $20 million a year. And it's a very prestigious show. It's been on forever. She has this powerful role. So I think she has to be the person. Well, for it to come from her for her to point it out, it's a huge deal.
Like personally speaking, if you're a person walking into a room where you're like the minority, there's no one like you in the room, you think it, like everyone said, you don't usually say it out loud. It's not like I walk into a room and go, hey, there's no Filipino people here at all, whatever. Like, it doesn't cross my mind to actually bring that up until afterwards when I'm talking to other people about it, right? But it's cool that they did that, wow.
Yeah, Nelson says, always good when someone speaks up about this. Paul says, very elegantly put. Paul says, real and raw.
It speaks for itself, right? All right, so the tricky business of identifying and responding to microaggressions. So I wish this was a little bigger so you guys could read it, because I'm sure you're tired of hearing me, but I'll just breeze over some of these. Like, challenging thought number one, like these challenging thoughts are like, ooh, should I respond to the microaggression or should I not? So these are some of the most common thoughts that would go through our minds. There's got to be an explanation for their comment. Maybe I'm being petty, maybe I'm expecting too much and I should lower my standards. Is this really a big deal? Am I being too sensitive? If I don't respond, well, that has its own set of consequences. I feel like I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. How would I respond? Well, I'm worried I'm going to lose my cool. Well, what if it makes things worse? So, this is how you can handle it. So, you don't have to respond to every single microaggression. In fact, like, I encourage you not to necessarily, to really take a step back, especially if you're impacted in an emotional way, or if it could be a number of things, like you've had a bad day or whatnot. You don't have to respond right then in the moment. And also just reading the situation to see, like, well, maybe somebody's having a bad day. Maybe they just lost somebody, maybe, in their lives. Maybe they had a sick child all week. And so, it is kind of this balancing act as to figure out when and how. So I love this rule of thumb, and I just think this is awesome. If either the issue, the relationship or both are important to you, avoidance is not the best approach. Express yourself in a way that honors your care for the other party and assert yourself in a way that acknowledges your concern. So, restate or paraphrase. I thought I heard you saying this. Is that correct? Could you say more about what you mean by that? By ask for more information. I'm wondering how you came to think that. And then separate the intent from the impact. You probably didn't realize this, but when you did this, it was hurtful or offensive because this. Instead, could you do this? Share your own process. I noticed that you blank. Well, I used to say and do that too, but then I learned blank. Kind of like how I shared about the pronouns. I just learned about them, over 5 years ago. I didn't know what they meant, and so now I do. Express your feelings. Well, when you blank, I felt blank, and I would like you to blank. Challenge a stereotype. So, one thing is true is that somebody can't argue with your own personal perception or experience, right? And so in my experience, blank, I think that's a stereotype. I've learned that, blank. Another way to look at this could be blank. Another way to do this is to promote empathy. So imagining, having them imagine if this happened to their child or their spouse or their friend, right? How do you think they would feel? Mirror, this one's like a little, I don't know. I don't personally feel comfortable with this one, but because it could be a little aggressive, but you could repeat or say what they just did. For example, where are you really from? Well, where are you really from? Can I touch your hair? Can I touch your hair? Pretend you don't understand. When people try to explain their comments, they often realize how ridiculous they sound. Well, I don't get it. Why is that funny? Use humor. Point out what they have in common with the other person. Like, I'm tired of hearing your Muslim jokes. Do you know that he's also studying blank and likes to blank? You may want to talk to him about it. You actually have a lot in common. What's in it for them? So I know you're not comfortable with blank, but they can help us reach out to and better serve other groups on campus or in the community. Remind them of social rules or policy, like our code of conduct. In the League of Women Voters, oftentimes we have community standards. And appeal to values and principles. I know you really care about blank. So acting in this way really undermines your intentions, or it's counterproductive to what you're trying to achieve, right? And so I like to incorporate this slide, and this is very league specific, but this can also, some facets of this can be applied to the work environment. And so this is the application, other than diversifying kind of like the people that you interact with every day and really thinking about that internal work of identifying unconscious bias, affinity biases, and in growing in that way. This is a how-to, like how will I? So thinking about how will I foster a warm and inclusive environment, a safe space, a space where each voice is heard, acknowledged, respected, and valued. How would I foster a haven for nonpartisan partners to collaborate, or in the workplace, other partners in the community or whoever we work with, right? Or coworkers. A league where individuals feel vulnerable to express their thoughts and ideas. A non-judgmental space as we're all growing together. A welcoming place for fresh new ideas and new initiatives. And an environment that encourages people to pursue their passions and activism. Or in the workplace, it could be to pursue or act in the spaces where they're the most competent. Okay. So here are some resources, and I'd love for Ellen again to just stand up, and she's the president of the League of Women Voters of the Ripon area, and so you are welcome to join as a friend of the League and just pop in anytime, or to actually join the League. And we have positions on everything. We're not just about voter services, which means like voter registration, voter education, it's about how to be a candidate. It could be we have positions on environmental issues, on climate change. We're currently putting a lot of pressure on the DNR. Possibly we'll go into civil lawsuit with them about basic drinking water standards regarding PFAS and lead. We have positions about affordable housing, affordable healthcare, domestic violence, you name it. And so those are all in the League of Women Voters Wisconsin website and also on the US. So if after looking at the positions, if there's an area that you would like to make a difference in, chances are the League has a position on it. And the place where you can act on that is in the League of Women Voters of the Ripon area. And so at state, we have the LWVWI DEI landing page, and you guys are welcome to take pictures of the slide for these. I compiled a resource database of over 500 and counting webinars, activity sheets, videos, books, articles, and they're all divided by category and then subdivided by medium, which means like, you know, article and all those things I just mentioned. I really love this DEI glossary. It's by Hive, and there's the link for that. Also on the DEI landing page as well, it has links to all the webinars I've done, and the Community Alliances Committee has done. On the left, we have the Transformation Committee. So local leagues who have a DEI committee or somebody who's interested in DEI work, they're welcome to attend with yours truly. It involves members of the league from all over the state who are interested in DEI work. There's no agenda, no minutes. You can come or never come. You can come once a year. We're just there as a resource. So sometimes people come because they're starting a DEI committee. Sometimes people come because they want ideas for like DEI activities. Sometimes people just like the companionship, or they just like to talk about how are they fostering this cultural change within their local leagues. We also have the Multicultural Adventures Field Trip Committee, which really facilitates field trips all around Wisconsin. And the next one's going to be fairly close to here, which is exciting. So David Overstreet of the Milwaukee County League is an archaeologist in the Menominee Nation. And so we will be doing a hybrid field trip there, which is going to be very exciting. We also have 3 of our board of directors of the state board are involved with DEI related committees. And I also like to talk about the Harvard Implicit Association test. So you can go to that website and it really just click on, they have like a whole bunch of different categories like disability, age, race, culture, religion, and you can test yourself, put yourself through those tests to gauge your growth with dismantling bias in those areas. And a great resource just to start out with recognizing our own biases is this last resource, which is The Bias Inside of Us by the Smithsonian. And that's also in this DEI landing page, the DEI learning catalog. This is kind of the battle cry here, you guys.
I know some of you believe it's you against the world. You want me to believe that everyone is against you? How about proving somebody right? How about all those people who did support you, who did encourage you, who loved you enough to tell you the truth, loved you enough to be honest with you? They drove you, they paid for you, they fed you, they clothed you. You cheered for them, they cheered for you. They helped you in practice, they picked you up, they took you home. Who was on your squad? Who do you want to prove right now? If you are always trying to prove someone wrong, instead of proving someone right, they can't get you enough fuel for the long haul.
You have got to realize that doing everything by yourself is the quickest path to burnout. Talent wins games, but teamwork wins championships. Do you just want to win games, or do you want to win championships?
I hear you talking. I don't need anybody. I don't trust anybody. But when that is your mindset, when that is your mentality, anger is the motivation. Pain is the motivation. Then revenge is what's driving you. Revenge can't be what drives you. It's not a long-term play. Eventually, anger and revenge are proving someone wrong has its limits. Why? Because together we can.
But if you really want to go further, you've got to be willing to come out of isolation. Welcoming support is one of the best gifts that you can give yourself. Yes, be strong, but also give yourself permission to be human. Trying to build your vision on your own places you at a disadvantage.
Even when I know that I can grind harder, even when I know that I can stay up later and get it done by myself. Yeah, you may be better at it, but don't underestimate the power of teamwork. Talent wins games, but teamwork wins championships. Did you hear that? Did you catch that? That is powerful.
You see, the isolation mindset is not healthy for you. This me against the world mindset is dangerous. In fact, I think this world is too busy for anyone to worry too much about you. This world is too selfish for people to be thinking too much about you. Why? Because they're thinking about themselves. But here is an idea. If you want more support, why not give it first? Everything you need in life must pass through another human's hands. I want to say that one more time so that you get it. Everything you need in life must pass through another human being's hands. That's why people are the most valuable resource on this earth. That's why you can't have this me against the world mentality, because you're going to block off your blessings. You're going to block off the people who have the resources. You see, God is trying to get things to you, but he has to use other humans. He has to use people in order to get it to you. Can I be clear? Can I be honest with you? The one thing might be holding you back is that you don't understand how important is it for you to understand people are here to be a resource for you. Everything you need in life is going to be given to you through another person. I believe success is a two-part process. Success, greatness, requires two things. We must get you right first. Can I ask you a question? Honestly, are you okay with correction? Are you okay with rebuke? Are you okay with someone telling you the truth? When someone tells you the truth, is that when they become your enemy? When someone tells you the truth, is that when you shut down? When someone tells you the truth, is that how you interpret it? That they are against you? They're not against you. They're for you because you can trust the room of a friend. You can always trust the truth. Are you open to being coached? Are you coachable? Are you open to being taught? Are you teachable? Are you open to being mentored? I mean, have you ever been a mentee? Do you allow people to encourage you, influence you, and have impact? These are the resources you may be running from, but I'm telling you to run to the truth. Run to the honest truth. Run to rebuke. Run to correction. Stop being easy on you. Start being tough on you. But here is an idea. If you want more support, why not give it first? I mean, you want people supporting you. You're so focused on you. Can I ask you a real question? Here comes the truth. Don't run away. Here comes the honesty. Don't run away. Who do you support? Who are you encouraging? Who are you clapping for? Who are you lifting up? Who are you cheering for? Who are you rooting for? You got to use your energy the right way, because the universe will give it back. Sometimes you got to pay it forward, and then you wait for the harvest to come your way. You need to give your support away freely. Why? Because together we can. I know you need more support, but so does your neighbor. I know you need support, but so does your friend. I know you need more support, but so does your brother. So does your sister. So does your friend. Let's work on you. Then work on your squad. And the most important part of it is what you give, not what you take. Why? Because I need you, and you need me. And together, we can.
Listen, I have gotten to the point where I will not try to do everything on my own. I am so over trying to fight serious battles on my own. I am so over trying to build my business on my own. The only way to grow is to have someone tell you the truth. A talented and passionate person, that's great. But a talented and passionate team, now that's a force to be reckoned with. And I want you to understand that at some point, you're going to have to realize that you have taken yourself as far as you can. You don't have to wait until you get to your breaking point. You don't have to wait until you're at the point of being ready to give up. You can start building your support system now. You can start building your team now. You can develop your growth strategy now. And so I want you to know that you don't have to have all the answers. This is coming from a recovering perfectionist, okay? You don't have to have all the answers. That's the beauty of having the right people in your corner. You need at least one person in your corner who can see what you can't see. And as a matter of fact, I recommend that you position yourself around people who will pull the greatness out of you. Yes, that means stretching you. And when you hear someone spewing division, don't take part in that. Division is unfruitful. You can get so much more done when you're working in unity. So who are you connected to, and what are y'all going to do to make the world a better place? When you are going through a tough time or you're fighting a difficult battle, don't try to figure it all out on your own. Don't try to compete with the person who has been sent to support you. It's not a competition. The only person you need to be in competition with is the person you were yesterday.
So I know that's very long, but it incorporates so much. It's practical for the workplace and with our nonpartisan pro-democracy space about preventing burnout, about working together as a team, about the power and unity and collaboration. And I really love the part where it says everything in our lives, he said everything in our lives has been touched by a human that we need, right? Like the grains of rice and whatnot. And so I just love that video because it just pulls all of this in together, the purpose, the mission, the initiative, and how beautiful and more efficient and powerful our work can be if we're working together. Diversity is about all of us and about us having to figure out how to walk through this world together. And that's it. Do we have any questions or comments? Yes.
Yeah, I just noticed one of the diverse groups that we never really seem to talk about is like body diversity. And that's one that personally affects me and I'm sure lots of people, but I don't think I saw it anywhere in the list, and we still live in a very fat-phobic society, so I don't know, I just want to throw it out there.
No, thank you for doing that.
I think it was on the list, you may have missed it.
Okay, it wasn't in one of the lists where it was these are all the different kinds of biases,
Because we went over the league statement on diversity, and I think that
it might
was
have been that one.
As a big girl, I look at that too. We have cake.
And on that note, let's eat cake. Thank you, Riley, for your production help. And thank you to the City of Ripon for letting us use your beautiful facility. And good night.